Hi, everybody. So, engagement of young people is going down. We have high unemployment, we have AI, and what I perceive as a mental health crisis of young people. I'm Catherine Bell, founder of the Awaken Company, and to help understand these challenges and also perhaps to come up with some solutions around how do we engage younger people in their 20s and 30s, I've asked my two sons, who right now are looking so excited to be here, for some help. So, John Brown, who is in last year of mechanical engineering at York University, and Michael Brown, who's in second year of business school at Rotman University. They're both in Toronto. They're at their place in Toronto. They have their High Rocks flags, which they completed and came third in. I'm very proud of them for that competition. So, John and Mikey, what do we do to help with engagement of younger people? How can we engage younger people? How can we do a better job of this?
Maybe I'll start off with something like some initial thoughts on engagement. So in the world we're living in now, where we have like you mentioned, like where we have artificial intelligence, but we also have these, call it, things that enable just rapid dopamine, such as TikTok, Instagram, and really any type of social media. The attention span of people our age, and no, I don't know this as a fact, but I can assume from the people around me, is substantially smaller than what it was probably 10, 15, 20 years ago. And because of this, call it dopamine factor from all the things that I just mentioned, our attention span is so small that it's really hard for us to engage in things. Maybe it's lectures, maybe it's at the workplace for probably longer than like a couple minutes. And because of this, it's really hard to grab people's attention unless they have, some sort of like intrinsic motivation for what they're doing. For example, I can pay attention in class, for, call it, like my accounting classes, because those are the classes I really like. But then when I step into, maybe like an economics class where, it's not really what I'm majoring in, I don't really care too much about my GPA in those classes, my attention span can shrink because of the intrinsic value that I'm kind of assigning to those classes. So that's like a very like lecture-based thing. Outside of that though, like I think it really comes down to having stuff that pulls people's attention. So making the workplace, making lectures shorter, but having more information and the key information packed in so that you can give students or give the younger generation what they need quicker and faster, because or else it's just not going to be digested.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. I think a huge factor of that is you need to have them want to do whatever they're doing, whether that's the lectures, the workplace. And what I think growing up, even starting to work in classes, whatever it is, everyone our age always asks, why does this matter to me? Like that's what, and they don't give a crap about what the lecture is unless they're motivated for grades, or if they actually like what they're learning and see how it affects them in the real world or them in the future. So I think that's one huge thing where, like, to get rid of this whole dopamine crisis, you could say, of everybody just wants short-term engagement. One way you can get people more engaged is to find what makes them tick and what makes them motivated. Because if you have someone motivated, you're good to go. Like there's so many times where in group projects you'll have people that won't do any work, that are kind of disengaged. But once you find what kind of makes them tick, what they want to do, if you find out what they want to do and you start kind of triggering that, you can get a lot out of people our generation, I find.
Mm. Both of you, very insightful answers, and they've kind of spawned more questions for me. What role does purpose play in terms of engaging your generation? Does work need to be purposeful? Does work need like you spoke, John, about what do they want to do? And Mikey, you spoke about like that when they're you're interested in something, then you're way more engaged. So what role does purpose play in how you perceive work and also the future of work?
I think it's pretty big from like just the examples I gave you. I don't think people our generation really think about it consciously, like, oh, my work has to be purposeful. It's more like it's usually a background thing of, again, what makes them tick. Like, for example, I had a guy that was doing like theoretical, like in the engineering side, he was doing theoretical calculations, and he just didn't do any of the work. But then we moved him to actually saying, okay, show us how we can make it. And then he does, like, we don't even have to like tell him to make it or anything. He'll just make the thing right away. He doesn't care about the theoretical calculations anymore on like making it. So I feel like if you don't have purpose, you're not going to be good at whatever you do.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think the only point I'll make is like kind of what John alluded to, which is purpose is fundamental to how you function as a human being. So today, and I'll keep using like the student in a lecture example. Today, if a student doesn't see purpose of a lecture, they're not going to pay attention in that lecture. But if they did see a purpose in terms of how that can affect their goals in the future, because they have now established purpose, that lecture now has mind share, so that it has this perceived value now. And by having that, you're able to actually essentially do the work that you're required to do or do to get a better grade. That can also be synonymously applied to the workforce, where it's if you're given a task, let's say these theoretical calculations John was given, and you really don't care about them or don't see how that's gonna, change the development of a company, why do it? Right? So I think it's a matter of everybody has a fundamental purpose, but each person's fundamental purpose is very different. So you have to slot them in the right places within an organization.
Yeah. And I also think you can almost like it's also a mindset shift too sometimes for purpose, where sometimes you don't think that something's purpose like has a purpose or has any meaning. But if you almost have a mindset shift or change your perspective, or someone changes your perspective, it could be purposeful. That's like the example of my in my last internship, when it was like I was doing boring data refinement, but then like the other intern and I reframed it as, we're going to use this data refinement task to actually learn how a well is made. And then once like learning how a well is made is very important for in the oil and gas industry. So once we kind of reframed that, our job became a lot easier and went by way faster. And we definitely would have done a better job doing that rather than not caring about it.
I'll make one kind of last interesting point, since mom's work is a lot on like leadership. So that's call it employee to employee on the same level within an organization. I think there should be more emphasis placed between the different like levels of the corporate ladder in terms of how purpose is communicated. Because if there is no line of sight of like a bottom line employee compared to the CEO, then that employee is probably not going to do what the CEO wants, because they don't understand the purpose of what they're doing, which then is going to not just affect the company, but will affect all the stakeholders around it.
Mm. Michael, that last point you made is bringing up something for me that I see as the future of work. I see the future of work becoming more like an organism, and in the sense that people will come in for discrete projects, complete the projects, each have their own individual piece to play. The group then disbands, another challenge arises, and a new group arises. So it becomes more like an organism than a traditional hierarchical organization. Do you too see something like this happening in the future? And would it be more engaging for you to be part of kind of, it's almost like to plug and play, and everyone becomes kind of their own businesses
Is it
or
almost like
organizations?
I don't want to make it like sound like contract work, but it is almost like you almost have for a given project, we'll say you almost contract in the pieces you need to get the job done, but for a different project, you might need different pieces, sort of thing. But then at this point, who is organizing those pieces together?
Mhm.
That's the question. Because it sounds like an interesting concept. It's just like I feel like there has to be some sort of hierarchy.
Yeah, I don't think so. Maybe I think you'll see a little bit more of it where you'll bring in more people. But then like I just said I didn't like economics, but I'm gonna start using economics terms. You have to think of like the opportunity cost of what like what it costs of having the employee within the company versus getting them from somewhere else. And the reason that probably hasn't already happened is it's much more economical. So not just like from an accounting, like, hey, it's probably cheaper labor if we keep them in the company, but it's also probably cheaper if I have the person in the company in economics terms versus like the trade-offs of what they could otherwise be doing to keep them in the firm. Because like if you look like very good organizations like the Googles, the Microsofts of the world, the Apples of the world, the reason they have this large amount of employees is not because they can't get employees anywhere else. Obviously, Apple could go and hire whoever they want to get some like contract work done, but it's being able to have the employees and have them so highly specialized
Yeah.
within the organization that they fit in Apple's organization. They respond to the values and the morals of Apple, but that doesn't necessarily relate to the values and morals of Google, right? Like the
Yeah.
same employee on a skill level might fit great one place based on their values, their morals, their ethics, etc., and how it relates to the organization, but that might not relate to another. So I like to summarize that thought, it's like sure there might be a little bit more of it for like one-off kind of skunk works type projects, but I think from a fundamental level of how companies operate and what their true value to society is, let's just put it like in dumb terms for Google, it's like having a search engine. You want the best people in your
Yeah.
company that work with your company's values there.
Yeah. And even just from a talent perspective, like coming out of university, I would love working in whatever company system you just mentioned. Like you would get so many different new cool experiences, but at the same time, it's not as beneficial or productive for company because you would way rather have someone who is specialized, that has a very no narrow scope of work, that knows everything about one specific topic. There's like, that one guy that's worked in the company for like 20 plus years that you can go and ask and they'll answer any question. Where like you couldn't really have that if you would have some sort of organization where people come in and out on different projects because like you don't have that sort of specialization. They might be decent at a bunch of things, but again, it's kind of like jack of all trades, master at none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful insights. Thank you both. It will definitely, I think, be a transition to eventually get there. And I think we do need a blend of hierarchy and unhierarchical process. Uh, let's turn towards mental health of your generation. What can leaders do to support the mental health of 20 to 30 somethings? And do you two have any practices that you do that would be helpful for leaders to hear about?
Yeah, I'll kick this one off. I'm first gonna say I do not speak on behalf of my generation because I think the way I view mental health is substantially different compared to others. A good example of this is a lot of people our age value like working from home. I think it's probably one of the dumbest things that a company can do. So I'm like super against working from home. Now, for some people, that works great for their mental health. I actually find it doesn't because it takes away from my work, and my work has, again, that intrinsic value to me. And by having intrinsic value, it gives me purpose. Therefore, I prefer to be surrounded by people who are working towards the same thing. So let me set that aside now because that's just one example of many where I differ from like youth my age. Um, so in terms of like the workspace, in terms of practices, or even outside the workspace of practices that, call it help me be happy, joyful, in a good mood, etc. I think it's having multiple purpose is. So it's having a purpose in the workforce, so you're intrinsically motivated in the workforce. But what happens when you go home? Like, are you going home and sitting on the couch and eating Doritos?
Mm.
That's not a purposeful life to me. Maybe for some people that is, but to me, that's not purposeful at all. So, mom mentioned at the start, like John and I competed in high rocks. So, a purpose for me is staying fit. So, outside of work and school, like I'm working part-time and doing school right now, fitness is important to me. So, I'm going to the gym, I'm eating healthily. Am I still probably going to have a treat every once in a while? Absolutely. Like it's not like I'm cutting myself off to absolutely everything. It's just the idea that I have different motivations that give me purpose in almost every function of my life. Like if I'm if I'm working out, I'm only working out.
Yeah,
If I'm at work, I'm only doing work. If I'm doing school, I'm only doing school. And when it's time for bed, I'm going to bed. Like it's like being very structured and in a way living in a bit of a box.
Mm.
yeah.
Thank
I think one thing is leaving work at work and school at school, or like, or working out is working out and staying present. That's one huge thing where you don't want those things to blend. And having almost using different parts of your brain, right? Where you're using a completely different part of your brain working out as opposed to doing some sort of work. Um, Again, like it's like for me, I think mental health and physical health kind of come hand in hand.
you.
Where if you're not like, because the workplace again, if you're working a full-time job, you're gonna be inside most of the day. You're gonna be sitting down. Like you gotta have some way to move your body, and that will definitely help your physical health. Go outside, go for a walk. Like that stuff can change your physical and mental health. Like people do have seasonal depression because it gets dark out and they don't see the sun. So like, and it's kind of the same thing with working in an office all day. You might not see the sun all day till you like get outside, then it's dark out. So like have some way, maybe just like on your lunch break, go outside, all that kind of simple stuff. And then from our generation, I think it's a whole problem with like now I sound like like a boomer almost being like, oh, social media is the problem. But it is the problem. Like people are like addicted to their phones. People like need that hit of dopamine from social media, and it's really bad for you. Like people like, and one thing that I always say is like comparison's the thief of joy, and literally social media is a comparison machine where you make comparison to these idealized people, I would say, and the only thing that's posted there is their idealized life. So it's like kind of a recipe for disaster. So I would say make your life in a like tailored in a way where you avoid social media and actually make social connection. Because like there's like some Harvard study saying like the number one like lifespan predictor is your social connections. So like I think both like physical and mental health is like you want to have strong social connections, whether that's family, friends, etc., and having interactions with other people, no matter how busy you are.
Mhm. And I think that building off of what you both said, I think leaders can make an effort to actually form connection with whoever they're working with, and that creates a different field to work and play in
Yeah.
organizations. You both know that self-awareness is huge for the practices at Awakening Company and also mindfulness meditation. What types of practices have you used? Do you to meditate? Do you to practice mindfulness? What else? Tell us what you do.
Um,
I'm your mother, you know.
I so could I be better at some of my mindfulness practices? Yes. Like, do I meditate every single day? I'm not gonna sit on here and like lie and say no. Like, I mean, say yeah, say no, say yeah. Sorry, I don't always meditate. Is the very simple answer. What I do use is I do use a journal. Am I journaling every day? No. But what the journal has in it is my short, my medium, and long-term goals, and I look at those every single day. So if I know what I want to achieve and I tell myself, like, not just what I want to achieve, but how I'm going to achieve it, and do what I need to do every day to achieve those goals, they'll happen. Or if not, the pursuit of that goal was better than not doing it at all. That's one form. The second form, you'll be happy to hear this, Mom. The second form is feeling my feet. I have a tendency to get really riled up. John would know this as well. Very unfortunately that he knows this. But it's feeling my feet in the moments that I can't figure stuff out. I still am not the best at it, but those are kind of the two practices that I
Maybe
do.
explain what feeling your feet is.
Feeling your feet is essentially like when you're feeling in most of the time for me, it's like when I'm feeling like very aggravated, very enraged. And feeling your feet for me is like if I'm like at my desk, I put my feet flat on the ground and try to feel the soles and try to feel each single point of my foot that's connecting to the ground. Um, and what that is trying to do is establish presence. So you're no longer, getting upset about whatever you're doing. Um, you're feeling the ground, and then eventually that kind of leads up to feeling your breath. And by doing so, you're not thinking of anything else that's happening. It's synonymous with being in the zone where you have that feeling of like instead of all these waves, it kind of just goes to one flat line. And by doing so, you're able to focus better.
Yeah. I would say I'm the more mindful brother.
Agreed.
But back
It's
when
not
I
a comparison. It's not a
It
comparison.
is now.
yeah, it's a
No
competition
comparison.
always. But when I was playing basketball in university, like I would get, and I never really had like, pre-game anxiety before this, but like during my second, third year university, I had crazy pre-game anxiety. I would like I just feel like my heart pound in my chest like before games. And I obviously did not like that and did not perform well when that happened. So to kind of calm myself down, ground myself, I would meditate before games. And my routine was like very, very simple. It's similar to feeling your feet, where I just set a timer for 10 minutes. I sit down, and the only thing I try to focus is, it sounds weird, but the inner lining of my nostrils and just feeling my breath. Like I don't want to, like it's not like you're controlling your breath. You just breathe in and out through your nose and just try like avoid controlling it and just like let it just almost sense what happens. And so that allows me to get pretty present. Um, Beyond that, like that practice I'll maybe do once a week now just to do it. There's a couple other things I've done is like before tests is just like four big deep breaths just to calm myself down. Even if I'm not nervous for a test, it's almost like a routine at this point. One thing I've done that's very similar to meditating, it's called non-sleep deep rest or NSDR. And it's like it's like basically a guided meditation. And I'll do that sometimes while like studying and I'm just, not really focused or I'm kind of tired. And it's just like 10-minute YouTube video I throw on. And then after you just feel a lot more refreshed and focused.
Oh, actually, okay, I want to make a couple points. One is that NSDR is actually really good. It's like because you essentially get the feeling of sleeping
Without
and the
sleeping.
feeling of relaxing without actually like knocking out. Which yeah, I kind of forgot about that. And as soon as you mentioned, I like remembered a lot about it.
Yeah, now you're gonna start doing
I
it.
probably will. And then the second point I want to mention is just on his like pre-test. I do the same thing where I close my eye. I actually do this when they announce that the exam starts. I don't rip my page open like every other student. I sit there with it closed, and because I have the feeling of wanting to, I sit there, close my eyes, and take two deep breaths before I open it. And it allows me when I first read like the first question, just so much more clarity. So yeah, that's actually like two really good points you made.
That's awesome. NSDR, you learned, like that's new to me, so I'm gonna look it up. So thank you.
There's some good videos on it.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Amazing. One thing that you two do that I just want to comment on is when I watched you do the high rocks, which was super fun to watch. It's super dynamic and super interesting. And the boys shot out of the gates super fast, like super fast. I know that they had a game plan, and then when things didn't go according to your game plan, what I loved about how the two of you operated was you brought in humor. You two started to laugh about shooting out of the gates so fast. And I thought, the humor that you bring also brings in compassion and also a sense of more ease and flow when things don't go so right. So, what other practices do you have when things don't go right? Like that humor with High Rocks was hilarious. Like, I just watched you two, like, what did we do right out of the gates?
Yeah, you actually make a really good point. It's that nothing is that serious. Like nothing. Like seriously, nothing is that serious. Like that test you took that's worth 50%, who cares? Like it's a freaking university test. Like it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like you're not gonna go back 20 years from now and think back on like a test you bombed. Like you'll probably look back on it and be like, oh, I was being like so stupid, right? So it's like nothing is really that serious. And like during our high rocks, for example, we were laughing like mid-race too. Like there were a couple points.
I was more like laughing in pain.
Yeah,
I was like,
but
why are we doing?
but it's almost one of those things where it's like if you can turn any bad situation into something good, whether that be through like humor, which is what John and I did, humor or joy, or for some people, it's actually turning like a negative experience into like just drive and like focus. It's about turning like negative into more of a positive. And by doing so, like in a way, it's mindfulness, but I don't have to think to like be funny. Like I don't have to like think about like, laughing at like how fast we came out of the gates. That was just stupid. It's so dumb from us. Um, but it that's more like unconscious mind than conscious mind. I don't have to be conscious to do that. Um, but I'm sure if somebody who doesn't have that like pre-built mindset, call it like I do, and they want to start doing that, I'm sure there's a way to, teach it, which would be like identifying the emotion you're feeling right now and trying to turn that into something else. Like maybe it's, hey, I did really bad on this exam, like whatever, shrug it off and keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing is coming back from failure. I know like I've had those experiences specifically in basketball where you're you go from starting your first year to not playing at all and you get down on yourself and there's times where like it does not seem funny. And the way that I kind of dealt with it is that you got to just think of everything as learning experiences and say like what can I learn from this? How do I move forward? So it's like almost taking actions on all the stuff that maybe went wrong and realizing that the past is history. Like you can't really control the past and focus on what you're controlling. Um, Another thing, just kind of on the side of humor and fun, is that if you can in the future focus on fun, you become daters because there's no like specifically the sports analogy. Nobody is better than someone that's having fun at something. Like, let's say you're doing that high rocks race and you're hating every second of it. You just don't want to do it. There's no way you're going to perform as well as someone that's having the best time of their lives
Yeah.
and is still pushing themselves as hard as the other person.
Yeah.
Because that person is more likely to get it done than the person that says, I hate this, I don't want to do it.
Well, think of the people that came in first, the guy from Quebec.
Yeah.
That guy was like having the time of his life.
Yeah.
The two guys from Quebec.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they were definitely having fun during it. And after it, as the second they were finished their race, they started drinking.
I love what's kind of come through in this conversation, the sense of joy, the sense of almost energetic vibration. If we are energetically high, we can't help but to imbue whatever we're doing with that positivity, with that good energy. I love that you both commented on that. So, when executives are watching this video, what do you want them to know to support people of your generation? What would be some of your personal kind of, here are some suggestions you would have?
The So I've worked with 3 different companies, and all 3 I've been fortunate to have like outstanding like bosses slash managers. And the common characteristic between them is that each of them was someone I would want to go have a beer with. Like each of them I would want to like spend time out of the office, like friendly, like have a beer. Like I almost call it like the beer test, which I've actually heard this on the flip side from one of my employers where when they were interviewing me, they were testing me to see if this is someone I could have a beer with. It's the same or very synonymous to do they kind of fit like the company culture? Can I relate to them? Can I have a like relationship at work with them that's not just like, hey, employee X, do this. It's like, hey, how are you? Like you can actually have a conversation, but still get work done. Those are the best kind of bosses I've had where it's I can relate to them outside of the workplace. And the boss I currently have, like a lot of the time when we have like our weekly update, the first half an hour is us talking about life. It's not talking about what work got done, what work didn't get done. It's more about like, hey, like how are you actually doing? Like what's been going on? Like, oh, like how's like this person, how's your brother doing? It's building a relationship with people beyond just treating them as like another person on the chopping block.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think a huge thing is beyond just like inside and outside relationships is creating a culture where employees and people our generation have the ability to get to do their tasks rather than having to do their tasks.
Mm.
So they come to the office every day and they're like, oh, I'm so excited. I get to do this, 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 and this, instead of being like, oh, I have to do this today. Where obviously there's going to be some tasks that kind of suck. But if you have that ability to create a culture and an identity where it's like, oh, I get to do this today. It's so exciting. You're going to get so much more from people our age.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say that's the big takeaway.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, John and Michael, for your contributions, and hopefully this helps leaders engage people in their 20s and 30s, and if nothing else, ignites conversation and real conversation about what is important to people at work. So thank you both, and I love you both very much.
Love you too, Mom. Thanks.
Okay.